And once again, welcome to this online forum, Examining the Future for Small Businesses, a discussion with Representative Ritchie Torres, a Democrat from New York, and Representative Andrew Garbarino, a Republican also from New York. Before we begin, please note that this webcast and all answers provided by the participants are meant solely for informational purposes and are not to be considered substitutes for legal or tax advice. Business loans, loans under the Paycheck Protection Program, and other federal lending programs are not guaranteed and are issued at the sole discretion of the lender in conjunction with SBA or other governmental agency guidelines as applicable. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of VistaCredit, its affiliates, or partner companies that may be featured in this webcast. At this time, we'll go over today's agenda and introduce our host for this afternoon's webcast. The agenda will see the congressmen speak about small business topics to begin the session. We will then conduct the question and answer period with both congressmen, handling audience questions that have come in advance of our session for today. VistaCredit will feature the findings from our recently published Latino-owned business study for 2022, and we'll speak further about the future of small business finance, as well as the opportunity presented by FinTech. Now it's my pleasure to welcome our host for this afternoon's webcast, CEO and co-founder of VistaCredit, Rohit Arora. Rohit, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Yeah, Charles, thanks for getting this organized.
Rohit, the floor is all yours.
Okay, so as I said, thank you everyone. I want to thank our partners at CPA.com. We worked with them very closely over the last 2 years, AICPA and their business subsidiary, CPA.com, to help thousands of small businesses, especially using the CPA channel very effectively to get them access to credit. Also, I want to acknowledge the support of our other partners, including Paychex, which has been a long-standing partners of ours, Hartford Insurance, Popular Bank, HSBC, First Republic Bank, and Nationwide Insurance. As their representatives have also joined us in the audience today as special guests. So with that, I would like to, open up the forum. Charles, we are delighted to have 2 congressmen from the state of New York. First, I would like to introduce Congressman Ritchie Torres, who is from the 15th District of New York. He represents Bronx, which is a hotbed of, I would say, multiracial, residency, a lot of small businesses, a lot of entrepreneurial, energy and spirit out here. And in the U.S. Congress, he's on the subcommittees for financial services and homeland security. I'm also delighted to have U.S. Congressman, Garbarino, who is again, part of the small business subcommittee as well as the homeland security. And one thing I would like to mention here is that recently he was awarded the award by the National Federation of Independent Businesses as Guardian of Small Businesses, which is pretty impressive. And with this, I would like to, commence today's sessions because both of them are very busy people, and we're fortunate to have them today here. And I think what we are trying to also do is to address a lot of questions because as a country, we are at a very critical juncture, and especially with the inflation report that came out today, it's very clear that we have a lot of challenges going forward. And for a lot of small businesses over the last 2-3 years have been extremely, I would say, starting with the COVID crisis, and then a lot of financial aid came in, and now with all the inflation and other pressures coming in, it has been a very challenging time period and very fast changing economy, which typically we didn't see over the last 10 years. The last 10 years were pretty stable in a way. So I think with that, I would like to, open up this webinar for today. So as I said, we have recently done a Latino study, and it is our pleasure to, welcome Congressman Ritchie Torres. Since he covers a district in South Bronx, which is very heavily Latino dominated, and also he's one of the youngest, elected city official from 2014 to 2020 as a city council member. So he has a lot of experience out here in this city and in this region. And I think some of the questions that some of the residents of his constituency have posed, we are gonna talk about that and some of the other issues and concerns that a lot of small businesses are facing right now in the country. So should we open it up, Charles, for Congressman Ritchie to speak about?
Yeah, Congressman Torres, if you could, please say a few words of welcome and introduction about yourself and your priorities, and we'll give the same opportunity to Congressman Garbarino before getting into that Q&A for today.
Yeah, exactly.
First, it's an honor to be here with you and with my colleague, Congressman Garbarino. I have the honor of representing the South Bronx, which is often said to be the poorest congressional district in America. But I think it's one of the most resilient. We were the hardest hit by COVID-19, which left a death toll of more than 7,000 residents, which is larger than the death toll of 9/11, Pearl Harbor combined. And the beating heart of the Bronx economy is small business. We were hit hard by the impact of COVID-19 and who since have been struggling to recover, especially restaurants and retail, heavily Latino businesses. And so one of my strongest priorities is to ensure that we are doing everything we can in Congress to support the recovery of small businesses, which is the beating heart of the American economy and creates the majority of jobs. And we have to ensure that small businesses have access to capital. And so that's going to be a priority of mine going forward, and looking forward to partnering very closely with my colleague, Congressman Garbarino.
So with that, I would say, we'll like to hear from Congressman Garbarino also about what his priorities are, what is he seeing in his own constituency, what are concerns that people are expressing right now, and what could be the way forward. Actually.
Oh, thank you, Rohit, and I'm glad to be here also with my colleague Congressman Torres to discuss the future of small businesses. Richie and I have worked on several things together, and we've done a couple of these together, and we've always had a good time. So it's always fun to be here with him. As everybody knows, small businesses have had an extremely difficult time over the past couple of years. First with the shutdowns, then now we have supply chain shortages, inflation, labor shortages. Government needs to, we've needed to do more to help them get back on their feet. As we all saw with the inflation numbers that were released this morning, our economic challenges as a nation are far from over. But we need to look forward, focusing on ensuring that the government programs we are currently running or that have run continue to run smoothly and in a way that lifts up small businesses, but also in a way without allowing government to become too burdensome to recovery. We need to help these companies, but not overregulate them. As a member of the Small Business Committee, it's my job to conduct oversight of the Small Business Administration. And as I said, in my view, we need to pivot away now from the pandemic mindset and focus on improving existing programs. I think programs such as the 7A loan program, the 504 loan program, community advantage loans, and get the SBA back to what they do best. The committee has worked with the SBA and Administrator Guzman to develop an open and honest partnership. It's something that we want to continue to do. And we hope to provide small businesses with the services and assistance that they need to navigate through the current economy and have access to small business programs. Something that I've heard a lot about, and we just had a hearing on it with the Small Business Committee, the hearing was called Back to Startups, Supporting Youth Apprenticeship, Entrepreneurship, and Workforce Development. Every small business I've talked to, no matter if it's manufacturing, retail, entertainment, they've all complained about workforce. They don't have the bodies, and they don't have the trained bodies to do what they need. So we need to figure that out. We need to figure out how to solve this workforce issue, and I'm sure all the small business owners on this call are experiencing the same thing. We've had some successes, some bipartisan successes in this past Congress. The Investing in Main Street Act was passed, and the Microloan Improvement Act was also passed to help, as Congressman Torres said, get capital to these small businesses. That's something that those programs will start, with these updates, will hopefully allow small businesses like the people, like the owners on this call, get access to that capital. And lastly, we also passed a bill this year, for the small business development centers, SBDCs, to now include cyber training amongst their staff. So when a small business, whether current or a prospective small business, goes and meets with the SBDCs, they are trained on cybersecurity. The pandemic really forced a lot of small businesses to go digital and to go online, when they hadn't before, and this opened them up to a new world of profits, but also opened them up to a new world of risks and threats. So through cybersecurity threats. So passing a law to require them to have some training so they can talk to small business owners about that was very important, and it's something that I'm very proud of. But I think I'm looking forward to the questions and the dialogue between my friend Ritchie, and I want to thank Biz2Credit for having me on today, and for everybody for tuning in to listen. I look forward to taking the questions.
Yeah, and I think thanks for comments by both the congressmen, especially on the cybersecurity. We have seen a lot of risks are adding up. We work with large insurance companies. We have seen cyber security premiums have gone up tremendously, and there's a huge gap, and I think that's a big security threat. Secondly, workforce issues are extremely challenging right now, so we are seeing that happening. Having said that, I think one good thing that recently came out from White House notification is to expand the SBA programs. And after 1983, they're thinking of allowing non-bank fintech platforms like ours to start offering, SBA loans, which I feel could really democratize the way, micro and small loans are distributed, or the way these small business owners get access to SBA loans in this country. So we look forward to seeing that, how, whether Congress during this session or the new Congress that comes up in early 2023, they will be able to address that issue, because what we found during PPP and other programs is now digital is the way. That's the way forward. That's the only way that things will get better, and that's the only way that small businesses will have more access to credit, and also more education about financial inclusion also now. So with this, I would like to open up for some of the questions, and then get your response. So I think this is for Congressman Torres. This is from Isaac from Bronx. As I said, business owners are extremely worried about inflation and increasing interest rates, because most of the small business loans are floating interest rate loans, unlike mortgages. So, one of the questions that people have been asking is that, what further support, you guys are thinking about providing the American small business owners right now, in this current environment and going forward.
Look, for me, the most important support that we can provide is greater access to capital. We have a system where larger banks have an incentive to make larger loans to larger businesses, and small businesses tend to be left behind. There's a severe shortage of lending to the smallest businesses who are struggling to survive now more than ever. I'm in New York, where the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well. 1 in 10 businesses were founded in the last year in New York City, which I think speaks volumes about the power of the entrepreneurial spirit. But what translates the entrepreneurial spirit into an actual business is access to capital, and that's where we need to do more work. Most small business programs go through the Small Business Committee, where Congressman Garbarino sits, but a few of them go through financial services, where I serve. And when we were establishing the American Rescue Plan, we did establish a $10 billion state small business credit initiative, which can be leveraged to generate about $100 billion in loans to the smallest of small businesses. And it's a program that's funded by the federal government, but it's administered by the state. Each state has its own version of the state small business credit initiative. A second thing that we did on financial services is we put about $9 billion into the Emergency Capital Investment Program, which pumps capital into minority depository institutions and community development financial institutions, which service communities that have been left behind by the largest banks. And that $9 billion capital infusion will support the provision of more loans to small businesses, particularly in lower income communities of color, places like the South Bronx. So those are a few of the initiatives that we've pursued to improve access to capital for small businesses.
Front of the access to capital, especially for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, is that how do we improve the digital delivery and the digital, I would say, awareness? Because a lot of business owners are still not very aware about these programs, and for them to get access to credit, because they're so busy, they're so busy in running their businesses day and night, they don't have time to go out and go to institutions, try to figure it out. The way most of like we see 52% of business owners who come to our platform are either doing it on weekends or weeknights. So I think one thing that we are seeing in other parts of the world is that the policymakers are also extremely focused on the digital mechanisms, the digital delivery, the digital awareness piece, because money is one piece which is important, but also the education and the delivery mechanisms are equally important, actually nowadays, to make these programs extremely effective. And that's what, one of the things that we have been interacting with policymakers in US and outside of US is that, how do you increase the effectiveness of that, and how you also then lower the overall risk? Because at the end of the day, lending is all about, the right delivery mechanisms and the right risk management mechanisms out there, actually.
That question is for?
This is more not, yeah, this is more like from my side, this was more like a observation and sort of a feedback for policymakers also, that how part of the policy can be framed from that angle.
Is that question for Congressman Garbarino?
Well, I will say I do appreciate. I mean, it's not. I appreciate the statement though that a lot of small business owners, they don't have the ability to go to somebody during as they say, banker's hours. It's so that's a very good, and it kind of, and I'm looking at the question that was meant for me from Syed, and it kind of ties into it. How do they get access to these programs, and how do people find out about them? I mean, I didn't know. I was an attorney before I went to Congress, and I represent a lot of small businesses. I didn't even know about some of the programs that the SBA offered or other agencies offered, and I represented some of these companies. So I have a very dedicated team in my office, which I'm sure I know Ritchie does as well. Usually most members of Congress do, that have somebody who deals directly with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, or the Small Business Development Centers. So I would say one of the ways to find out, you can't talk to somebody in the middle of the workday because you're working, send them an email, send my office an email, and if you're in my district, and we can help you, because then we can set you up with somebody from the SBA or somebody from the local Small Business Development Center who all of a sudden might come up with there's a, you want to do this, you want to become an exporter, well, there's this program that you can get. You manufacture now and you want to start exporting, here's something you can do. Oh, you need funds, you need access to capital. These are certain small business programs that we have that you can apply through the Small Business Development Center and work with a local institution. So if you can't get to one of the SBA or an SBDC during work hours, contact your local congressman. We have access, and we can respond by email. We can correspond by back and forth, and we can find out the answers for you, or put you in touch with who you need to be. My district office, I know, is both through pandemic funds and other SBA programs. We've opened up millions of dollars of capital or of loans that were available to small businesses that were either tied up or people didn't know about. We've had great success, and I have to say that's through our partnership with the local SBDCs. So if you can't get to the institutions, reach out to your local congressman. It's our job to help.
No, I think that's very important, because half of the battle is just knowing what they can get, and then how they can get. And I think what we are doing at Biz2Get, Biz2X also is that we have developed a whole SBA digital lending platform, because that's the next thing. Once you know it, how you execute on it, how do you apply for that, how do you get it? So I think that whole digital piece has to be from knowing to applying to getting, and then ongoing whatever processes and the covenants are. And that's what we are aiming to do also, because what we are finding out is that's the most effective way that all of us can serve small businesses, whether from the policy side or lending side or even educating them more.
And I just want to add on with the cyber, and Ritchie and I both sit on the Homeland Security Committee. There's an agency, the CISA, the Cybersecurity Information Security Agency, that offers, and they have a local regional office here. And they on Long Island, but they have them all over the country. They offer things for free for small businesses, for municipalities. They offer them for everybody, but they can do, they can come in and they can see how your system's set up. They'll do different things for free. And again, that's not the Small Business Administration, that's under the Department of Homeland Security, but this is something that their regional offices offer. So again, I didn't know about this program until I got elected, but now I can push people towards it.
Exactly. And this is a question for Congressman Torres in the same spirit, is that how can small businesses track the relief and the small business aid that was issued by Congress and the impact made on the real community members, because it against the whole delivery mechanism, the impact mechanism, how that can be tracked better to make these programs more effective out there.
I'd be curious to hear Congressman Garbarino's opinion, but I feel like we in the federal government are ineffective, to be honest with you, at tracking.
Yes.
We'll announce these programs at a high level of generality, but it's not clear to people what impact it has in their lives and on the ground. I mean, one thing that people did feel in their lives was PPP.
Yes. Yes.
Widely advertised program because there was hour-to-hour, 24/7 coverage of the pandemic, and the PPP was a critical part of the response to the pandemic. And most businesses would have collapsed were it not for the PPP program. So that's a rare example of a program that people felt immediately and deeply and broadly in their lives, but that's the exception. Most of these programs are poorly marketed and exist as an abstraction, and people fail to feel them in their real lives. And I feel like we in the federal government have to do a better job of communicating this $9 billion that we pumped into the emergency capital investment district. Here's what it means for your particular neighborhood. Here's the number of loans that it's led to your particular neighborhood. It's not clear to me that tracking is going on. And so that's something that we have to do to restore confidence in these programs.
I think you're right, Richie. The tracking is happening because we've had the government come and testify, but they're very bad about letting people know about these programs. If you had, everybody knows about PPP and loved it because it worked, but I mean, unless you've done an SBA loan or you've done one of these programs, if you've done it, you know how well it works. But if you haven't, you don't even know it exists. I mean, we did a lot, not just during the pandemic, but we have some great programs that the SBA runs that I did use when I was an attorney, and our clients loved them and they were great and they really helped them. But if they didn't know about them and they didn't use it, of course they don't know. So there needs to be better outreach. The SBDC's local guys are good, but they need more help getting word out to small businesses. Maybe partnerships with local chambers or something to let people know about these things, because half the battle is notification and knowledge. I think Richie's absolutely right on that.
And I think how do you involve private sector more? One reason for success of PPP was that everybody was involved in that program, whether they were large banks, small banks, non-banks, media was involved. So I think that's another thing we have seen, is that how and that's tough for the governments to do that most of the time, but how you involve the private sector, because they are ultimately the ones who are delivering it out there, and how to involve them in the right way. I think that also makes a lot of difference right now in this environment, especially. I think the next question is for Congressman Garbarino, the food business in general, because it has just gone through so many I would say challenges over the last 2-3 years. Initially it was all shut down, then labor shortages, and now food inflation and wage inflation, and rent inflation, and now the wholesale prices are increasing. So what's your advice? And you have been a former lawyer, you have worked with a lot of companies, and food business is one of the largest businesses.
Represented restaurants. Yeah, it was local.
Yeah.
I mean, at restaurants, even especially here on Long Island, dealing with, all levels of government. It's normally, if you're a restaurant, you're not thinking about, how's my congressman going to help me today? Because, you're more interested in, I got to deal with the state liquor authority or the local health department or and whatnot. And those can all be, that's a lot of red tape, as I know from my previous life as an attorney. It's something that we could do. We had the restaurant revitalization fund, which was supposed to help a lot of these restaurants who were shut down during the pandemic and lost a lot. It was underfunded. We'd like to, I know a lot of people's bipartisan support to get that back up, so restaurants who needed access to those funds could get it. That's just to get back on a level playing field. But right now, between the cost of goods, the lack of employees, the lack of access to goods. I was talking to a bunch of Burger King franchisee owners, and they're all small businesses. And I didn't know this, but there's a mustard shortage. They can't get access to the big mustard containers. They have to go to the grocery store and buy the squeeze ones. And these are things that, and as like on the big level, for Congress, we need to figure a way to fix that supply chain issue. As for employees, we need to not just, figure a way whether it's visas, whether it's changing the Social Security rules that allows retired people to go back and earn more money, so they don't lose the Social Security benefits. Those are items that, to help get people back into the workforce that can do it. That, those are things that we need to look at. It's as for the cost of goods. I was at a local bar and restaurant. One of my, it's probably my local Cheers, if you know the story. Everybody knows your name there. You go in, and I heard from the owner, and he says, look, some of the costs aren't going up. He says, but I'm feeling the pain every bill I get, whether it's garbage pickup, a beer delivery, a food delivery. He says, it's got a fuel surcharge on it now. So, and I can't raise my prices. To help cover those things completely, because then you'd be paying $20 a hamburger at a store, and people just won't pay that. So it's these problems now are definitely on the grander scale because they're affecting everybody, not just one region. And it's something that we have to continue to work towards. And it's got to be done on a bipartisan level, because small businesses are in every congressional district in the country. We all have them. So, and everybody's facing the same problems. Ritchie's businesses are facing the same ones as mine. And we need to solve this in a way to, I don't have all the answers now, but it's something that we all have to discuss as a team going forward to get it addressed, because at the end of the day, small businesses don't care about the political fighting. They just want to see something get done to help them. And
exactly, because they are hardworking people who want to, and they create most employment in the country.
Yeah, I wish if something on the short term, though, if we can get more money for that restaurant revitalization fund, that could help businesses directly, that'd be good. But everything else is going to take time to fix.
Yeah, that was a very popular program, but the money ran out.
It ran out very quickly. A lot of people did not get it.
A lot of people didn't get the money, exactly. Yeah. And I think this is a question for Congressman Torres. I don't think even Federal Reserve knows the answers to this question. Is that, do you think that Federal Reserve will be able to reduce inflation without causing a recession?
Good luck with that one, Ritchie.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think the Federal Reserve knows the answer.
Look, I've expressed to the chair of the Federal Reserve the concern that if we are too aggressive in raising interest rates, risk the worst of both worlds, inflation and high unemployment, stagflation. And so I feel like we have to tread carefully, and we have to be careful not to plunge the economy into a recession. The Federal Reserve Chair promised a soft landing, but what we've seen from him is aggressive. There have been 5 rate increases, 3 of which were large rate increases. It's the most rate increases that we've seen in more than 40 years. And the impact on inflation has been minimal. An example that's often cited is the car market. In the used car market, it appears that the monetary policy has been effective at reducing wholesale prices, but not retail prices. And then in the new car market, it's been largely ineffective because higher income households with savings can afford to purchase vehicles with cash, and therefore are unaffected by interest rates. No one's they're not taking out auto loans. So I worry that we're aggressively raising these interest rates, and we're going to eventually plunge the economy into a recession and do more harm than good. And that's, so I have to be honest with you, I'm pessimistic. I have not seen the soft landing that the Federal Reserve Chair is promising, and inflation has remained persistently and painfully high despite 5 historic rate hike increases.
Yeah, so I would like to thank both Congressman Torres and Congressman Garbarino for their, I would say, very thoughtful as well as forthright, I would say, observations and views. Because as I said earlier at the start of this webinar, this is a very critical time. And as Congressman Torres also said, I foresee a pretty tough 2023. Sitting from here, and we deal with thousands and thousands of small businesses. We have been doing this for last 14, 15 years, and this has been, I would say, one of the toughest environment after 2008 crisis. And our worry is that this is going to be a long, drawn, slowdown in the economy that can take a pretty significant point of time to come back. So obviously, this is the time for everybody to, think of how we can help small businesses, both from a policy mechanism as well as from a delivery mechanism, because making policy, having money is great, but until it doesn't reach the businesses the right way, it's not very effective. And I would like to, reiterate the fact that what SB has been trying to do is great, but how we can make them even more effective, and how we can even bring them into a new age kind of an environment, which I think SB over the last 2 years has been very progressive, in that sense. So I think with that, I would like to thank both of you guys, and I know you guys are busy people, and we will love to be in touch with you guys as we are going to do a poll right now of small businesses, what are their top concerns. And since we are also based out of New York City, so we'd like to have further interactions with you in the coming months.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you for what you do, Rohit, for the small businesses. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So with this, we are going to conduct a poll of the common challenges that the business owners are facing right now. And as we had said earlier, high inflation and supply chain disruption has been one of the big issues. Rising interest rates, as we saw with today's inflation report, looks like interest rates will still will still be raised pretty aggressively by the Federal Reserve. Not getting the right employees, or not even getting employees, to do the work has been a big challenge. And then obviously, a lot of small businesses are still recovering from the pandemic and the economic effects of the pandemic. So we'd love to see, how small business owners and other people in the audience, poll about it and react to it. And we will actually release those results in real time, and then talk about some of the other things.
At this time, as Rohit just mentioned, we are running a live poll. You should see that option have appeared in your viewport for the GoToWebinar screen. You can select one of these options and submit your response. And as these results tally up, we're just about halfway through. We'll give another 30 seconds if you'd like to have your voice heard in today's poll. course, these responses will also be shared with the congressional offices of both Congressman Torres and Congressman Garbarino as they continue to support small business interests in their work there on Capitol Hill. We'll give another 10 seconds or so. So any last comments or input that you'd like to have into the poll, please do submit your vote just about now, and we'll bring Rohit back in a moment to read out those results. And I think here we go. So now the poll will close. If you did not have a chance to submit your answer, please do send us your thoughts in the Q&A section as well. And we'll bring up Rohit one more time to share these poll results with everybody. Rohit, go right ahead.
Yeah, so as we can see, high inflation, supply chain is pretty much among the top two, factors. Obviously, the impact of pandemic is still pretty widespread. A lot of small businesses are still recovering, from that, and and they had very challenging time during the crisis, and in spite of all the government aid and the government money that came in, still, they have suffered immensely. Obviously, going forward, rising interest rates and financing costs are becoming a bigger concern because, as I had said earlier, most of the SBA loans and lines of credit products are floating interest rate products, unlike more mortgages. So you cannot lock in a lower interest rate. That clearly means that every time Federal Reserve is going to increase the interest rates, we will see a higher interest rate, load on the existing lines of credit and term loans for the business owners, which is unfortunate, for the time being. And we foresee that, the high interest rate regime will continue for 2023. So that's again going to be a bigger issue as we move forward later this year into early next year. We have seen this across the board, that, hiring the right employees is extremely challenging. One, there's a lot of wage inflation. Secondly, just getting the right people, the bodies to come and work has been a huge challenge during the crisis, COVID and post-COVID. A lot of people are still going through the health crisis. There's a big mental health crisis, physical health crisis, and overall, things feel and look very different than pre-COVID world. So I think we're still recovering as a country from this experience of COVID, and obviously with things shifting so dramatically over to digital side, we have also seen that a lot of consumer preferences have changed, and the way of doing business has dramatically changed over the last 2 years, and that pace of change has been so massive that a lot of people, workers, business owners are still trying to readjust to a new normal. So I think with everything happening now, first we had the health shock, now we have I would say an economic undercurrent which is getting extremely strong with high inflation, high interest rates, and low economic growth that is coming now, probably with the recession also. I think things are going to be pretty challenging over the next 18 months, in my view. Having said that, every year we are very proud of doing a Latino-owned business study. We have a lot of Latino-owned businesses, and we did that in 2022. We released those results publicly a week back, and we'd like to share those results today with all our audience because we have a lot of Latino businesses, we have a lot of mainstream businesses, we have a lot of minority businesses, and the mission and the vision for Biz2Credit always has been to help every small business in the country. And also we have been very interested ourselves as first generation immigrants to look at how different immigrant groups are performing in this country. And as we can see, there is some good news. There's still a lot of stuff to be done. So I would say the good news is that the average annual revenue of Latino-owned businesses has gone up, and actually during this current environment, which has been extremely tough, where we have seen that Main Street businesses have actually, have shrunk, this year in terms of revenue. The Latino-owned business revenues have gone up, which is an encouraging sign. I would say, the average earnings have also gone up, which is again a good sign, because when we compare it to the overall mainstream small business earnings, they have gone down, pretty significantly by close to 11%, while the Latino-owned business earnings have gone up by 11%. So there is a net, gain of like almost 22%. Having said that, there's still gaps in the Latino-owned businesses are smaller in size compared to an average small business in US. Their credit scores are still lower. They are younger businesses. So one thing that we have seen is that a lot of businesses have shut down during the crisis and they have not reopened back. So the average age of businesses which are operating right now, has gone down, both in mainstream businesses but also in the Latino businesses, and that's one thing where we need to, and we are hopeful that we'll make progress back as the economy reaches a new normal. And I think overall, it's, I would say it's more positive than negative report in spite of all the economic headwinds that we are seeing. It will be interesting to see how the next year will pan with because last year we still saw a very healthy economic growth. What we foresee this year is going to be a slowdown in the economy, and I think still the challenges that small businesses face today are pretty much same. The approval rates by banks is still pretty low. During a recession, we have seen in the past that banks pull back much faster from lending to small businesses than to large businesses. Still, the digital experiences at most of the lending institutions is subpar. We have seen that. That leads to a lot of paperwork, that leads to a lot of to and fro, a lot of follow-up. And as I had said earlier, most of the small businesses are very busy people during daytime, during weekdays, during weekends. They don't have a lot of time to go and chase bankers, and they don't really work, the banking hours. So has been a constant challenge. We are seeing more movement towards digitization, but it's still slower than what I had expected in the post-COVID world. So I think that's one area that we are trying to see how we can support both the lending institutions as well as the small business owners, because that brings more transparency, also more choice, and then more control over your own data, because that's an important piece out there. And I think all in all, as as people have said, these are very interesting times we are living in. So there is going to be a lot of financing demand that we see is coming in, because there has been a big pullback in the government stimulus programs, which was expected. And as Federal Reserve interest rates, now we are foreseeing that these rates can even go up to 4.5% and not even at 4%. And with the whole, and that means that SBA lending is getting expensive every single day, and we can reach a double-digit SBA lending, in early 2023. I think, as I said earlier, variable interest rate is now hitting a lot of people, a lot of businesses, and it's going to be, and this pain is going to accentuate over time. And I think it's just about, the question is that how do we go through this pain? And I think because most of the small business owners are very tough and resilient people, they know how to navigate a lot of these uncertainty. They have done it in the past, and most of the businesses which can navigate through this uncertainty actually come out much stronger at the other side. So obviously everybody will have to hold their nerve, everybody will have to be very execution focused, and at the same point of time, I think hopefully in 2023, one thing that we think is going to happen is, because of the higher interest rates, the good thing is going to be lower inflation. We are hoping that the number of people who will be available for working at small businesses is going to increase in 2023. We're hoping that things will get more towards normal, because we are in the post-COVID phase. So a lot of the impact of COVID is going to go away, and hopefully the gas prices and other commodity prices start going down. Supply chain issues are getting better, but they're still pretty acute. So they hopefully should get better in 2023. So if these things happen, I think in spite of higher interest rates, low economic growth, we should see some improvement in the overall economic environment for small businesses. But as I had said earlier, and I'm just saying it again, we are going to see a tough 2023, a lot of demand for financing, lower supply of financing from traditional banks, and at the same point of time, more, I would say execution focus has to come from small business owners themselves.
Well, Rohit, thank you very, very much for leading us through today's session on the future for small businesses, especially with this look ahead to 2023. At this time, we have reached the conclusion of our allotted 45-minute session for today's webcast. We appreciate everybody who has tuned in, and especially want to extend a very warm thank you to both Congressman Ritchie Torres and Congressman Andrew Garbarino for their presence on today's session and for taking all of your questions on today's webcast. As we conclude this special webcast event, we do want to make business owners and all of our attendees today aware of resources that are available to business owners, and some of which have been provided by the hosts or supporters of today's event in particular. The AICPA and CPA.com partners of Biz2Credit have developed resources that are available to CPA firms who are serving small business clients, and those resources are available if you visit cpa.biz2credit.com or cpa.com. We encourage you to visit our partner websites for information and to learn more about working with a certified public accountant. At Biz2Credit, we are committed to providing financing to more small businesses and helping business owners secure the best funding options for each and every project or capital need, with technology that makes business financing easy to understand and easy to access. Biz2Credit's financing includes fixed rate options, which business owners can qualify for within 24 hours of submitting an online application. You can see more on the screen here or visit our website at biz2credit.com, where you're able to create a funding account and submit an application online in just 4 minutes, whether from your phone or your laptop computer. So at this time, this concludes the broadcast of today's online forum, examining the future for small businesses, a discussion with Representative Ritchie Torres and Representative Andrew Garbarino. Today's webcast was presented by Biz2Credit with support from Biz2Credit's partners. A recording of today's online forum will be made available in the Biz2Credit Webcast Center, which can be found again on biz2credit.com, and it will be sent out over email following the conclusion of the session. At this time, your session will now disconnect automatically. Thank you for joining us.